The impossible demand. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the holographic projection floating above her desk and felt her jaw tighten. The contract terms scrolled past in precise cold language. Terms that every human colony had accepted for the past 40 years. Terms that were about to change. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Sarah said, her voice dangerously calm. "You want New Terra to increase our mining output by 30%, reduce our compensation by 15%, and accept stricter quotas on food imports. Is that accurate?" The Valorian trade minister, a tall being with blue crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns, nodded serenely. His name was Crystallix, though whether that was his actual name or just what humans could pronounce, Sarah had never been sure. "These terms are standard across all agreements with developing species," Crystallix said in his melodious voice. "Your colony signed similar contracts when you first established New Terra. This is merely an update to reflect current galactic market conditions." "Current conditions that only seem to affect human colonies," Sarah noted. She pulled up another display showing trade agreements with other species. "The Creven mining operations on Sigma 7 actually got better terms last year. Same with the Torgat agricultural settlements." "Those species have proven themselves more reliable," Crystallix replied smoothly. "Humans are still relatively new to the galactic community. You must understand that from our perspective, you remain an unknown quantity. These adjusted terms simply reflect the risk assessment." The pattern nobody mentioned. Sarah had done her homework. Over the past 3 months, she had quietly reached out to every human colony administrator she could contact. The pattern was clear and infuriating. Crystallix's face showed what might have been surprise. In Valorian culture, quick agreements were considered good business. Delays suggested instability. "Captain Chen, I should mention that this offer has a deadline. If New Terra does not sign within 48 hours, the collective will be forced to reassess whether continued trade with your colony is viable." There it was. The threat that always came when humans asked too many questions. Sign or be cut off from galactic trade entirely. For a colony that depended on imported medical supplies, advanced technology, and food supplements to feed their growing population, being cut off meant slow death. Sarah met Crystallix's crystalline eyes without flinching. "Then I suggest you hope our council works quickly." The secret meeting. That night, Sarah convened an emergency meeting in the secure conference room beneath New Terra's administration building. Around the table sat 15 people. Colony administrators from 11 different human settlements, connected through encrypted channels that had taken months to establish without GCC knowledge. "They're doing it to us too," said Marcus Webb, administrator of the mining colony on Epsilon Station. His face looked haggard on the holographic display. 15% reduction in compensation, 30% increase in quotas. If we don't sign, they'll cut off our supply shipments. "Same here," confirmed Administrator Rodriguez from the agricultural world of Greenhaven. "They know we can't survive without the fertilizer imports. Our soil still needs another decade of treatment before it can sustain crops without supplements." Sarah watched as each administrator reported similar stories. The pattern was undeniable now. Every human colony was facing the same pressure simultaneously. This wasn't just business. This was coordinated. "They're testing us," Sarah said quietly. "The collective is seeing how far they can push before we push back." "Push back how?" Rodriguez asked. "We're scattered across 20 star systems. We have no unified government, no military, no leverage. They control the trade routes, the technology, the shipping. We're completely dependent on them." "Are we?" Sarah pulled up a different set of documents. "I've been analyzing what we actually produce versus what we actually need. Yes, we import a lot, but we also export enormous value. Rare earth minerals, agricultural products, manufactured goods. The collective makes substantial profit from human colonies. Profit they can replace by trading with other species," Marcus pointed out. "Can they?" Sarah highlighted specific data points. "Look at our productivity compared to other species. Humans produce 23% more output per worker than the galactic average. We innovate faster. We adapt to new challenges quicker. We work longer hours and complain less than most species." She let that sink in before continuing. "The collective needs us more than they want to admit. They're pushing because they think we won't push back. They think we're too disorganized, too desperate, too afraid of being isolated. They're right about us being afraid. And Rodriguez said quietly, "My colony has 4,000 people. Half of them are children. If they cut off our fertilizer imports, we'll face starvation within 6 months." The radical proposal. Sarah took a deep breath. What she was about to propose was either brilliant or would get her removed as colony administrator. What if we all say no? The silence on the conference call was absolute. What? Marcus finally asked. All of us, every human colony. We reject these new terms simultaneously. We tell the collective that if they want to renegotiate, they need to offer fair terms that apply equally to all species, including humans. That's insane, Rodriguez said. They'll cut us all off. Will they? Sarah challenged. Think about it. If one colony refuses, they can make an example of us. But if every human settlement refuses at the same time, that's 20% of their mining output, 15% of their agricultural production, and significant portions of their manufacturing capacity. Can they really afford to lose all of that at once? Administrator Kimani from the science colony on Research Station Alpha spoke up. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. You're proposing a coordinated labor strike, but on a species-wide multi-system scale? I'm proposing we stand together, Sarah corrected. Every species in the collective negotiates from a position of unity. The Valorians speak with one voice. The Crevan colonies coordinate their policies. Even the Torgath settlements operate as a unified bloc. Only humans accept being treated as separate, powerless entities. Because we don't have a unified government, Marcus pointed out. Earth is still dealing with its own problems. The colony charter specifically states we're independent settlements. Independent doesn't mean isolated, Sarah said. We can coordinate without forming a government. We just need to act as one on this single issue. We all refuse the new terms. We all demand fair treatment. And we all stand by each other if the collective tries to punish anyone. The vote that shook the galaxy. The debate lasted 6 hours. Arguments flew back and forth. Some administrators thought Sarah's plan was inspired. Others thought it was suicidal. But slowly, a consensus emerged. They were tired. Tired of being pushed around. Tired of watching her people work themselves to exhaustion for diminishing returns. Tired of being treated as the galaxy's cheap labor. My grandfather used to tell me stories. Administrator Okafor from the industrial colony on Forge World said near the end. About labor movements on Earth. About workers who stood together and demanded fair treatment. He said those movements changed the world. Maybe it's time we change the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. All 15 administrators agreed to the plan. More importantly, they agreed to spread the word to every human colony they could contact. Within a week, 43 human settlements had joined the coordinated response. When Chrysalix returned to New Terra for Sarah's answer, he found her waiting with a simple statement. New Terra rejects the proposed terms. Sarah said calmly. Furthermore, we request that the Galactic Commerce Collective establish a formal negotiating committee to discuss fair and equal treatment for all human colonies. Chrysalix's crystalline features shifted through several colors that Sarah's translator mic'd as confusion and anger. Captain Shen, I must warn you that rejection of these terms will result in immediate suspension of trade privileges. We understand. We're prepared to accept that consequence. You colony will run out of medical supplies within 3 months. Your food supplements within 5. Are you truly willing to risk your people's lives over a contract dispute? Sarah pulled up a display showing a list of 43 colony names. These are all the human settlements that have joined our position. If you suspend trade with New Terra, you'll be suspending trade with all of them. Can the collective afford to lose that much production? For the first time, Chrysalix seemed genuinely surprised. This is unprecedented. Individual colonies do not coordinate policy against the collective. Human colonies do now, Sarah replied. We're asking for something very simple. Treat us the same way you treat every other species. Equal terms, equal rights, equal voice in trade negotiations. If the collective can't provide that, then we'll find another way forward. Another way? Chrysalix's colors shifted to something Sarah's translator marked as concern. There is no other way. The collective controls all major trade routes in this sector. "Then I guess we'll build our own routes," Sarah said, and meant it. The impossible becomes possible. Crystolix left without another word. Within hours, messages flooded in from other Valorian officials, from Crevan trade representatives, from various species expressing shock and concern. The idea that humans would coordinate to refuse collective terms had literally never occurred to anyone. That night, Sarah stood on the observation deck of New Terra's administrative tower, looking up at stars that suddenly seemed less distant. Her communication device buzzed constantly with messages from other administrators, from colony citizens expressing support or fear, from Earth politicians who were just catching up to what was happening. One message made her smile. It was from Marcus at Epsilon Station. They're calling it the human refusal, like it's some kind of disease. But you know what? I think they're scared. For the first time in 40 years, the collective is actually scared of what humans might do. Sarah thought about her grandparents, who had been among the first colonists to leave Earth. They had come to New Terra with dreams of building something better, something free. But slowly, they had found themselves trapped in systems controlled by others. Maybe it was time to remember what humans were good at. Not just working hard or adapting to harsh conditions, but standing up, saying no, demanding better. The galaxy had gotten comfortable treating humans as convenient labor, as colonies to be managed and controlled, as a species too disorganized and desperate to cause problems. They were about to learn differently. Sarah pulled up her schedule for tomorrow. There would be so much work to do. Coordinating with other colonies, planning for potential supply shortages, building new trade networks that didn't rely on the collective. It would be hard. People might suffer before things got better. But for the first time in 40 years, humans were acting like they belonged in the galaxy as equals, not as subjects. And Sarah suspected that once humans started saying no, the whole galactic order would have to change. The first consequences. 3 days after the human refusal began, the Galactic Commerce Collective made their move. Supply ships scheduled for human colonies were diverted. Trade accounts were frozen. Official messages announced that all human settlements were under temporary trade suspension pending policy review. Sarah watched the news broadcasts from the observation deck, her expression carefully neutral. Around her, New Terra's leadership team looked worried. They had known this was coming, but the reality of it was still frightening. Medical supplies will last 94 days, reported Chief Medical Officer Dr. Patel. After that, we'll be limited to basic treatments only. Anything requiring advanced pharmaceuticals or equipment will become impossible. Food supplements? Sarah asked. 147 days at current consumption rates, answered Supply Coordinator Liu. We can stretch it to May to 200 if we implement strict rationing. 200 days. Not even 7 months. That was how long they had to make this work before people would start dying. What about the other colonies? Sarah asked. How are they holding up? Communications Officer Martinez pulled up a galactic map showing human settlements highlighted in blue. 12 colonies are already requesting permission to break rake and accept the collective's terms. They don't think they can last long enough for the strategy to work. Sarah felt the weight of every decision she'd made pressing down on her shoulders. She had convinced these people to stand together. If the plan failed, if colonies started starving, that blood would be on her hands. Tell the 12 colonies we understand, Sarah said quietly. If they need to accept terms to survive, we won't judge them. But ask them to hold out for 2 more weeks. Give us a chance to make this work. What the Galactic Commerce Collective hadn't counted on was human ingenuity backed into a corner. Within a week of the trade suspension, something remarkable started happening. Human colonies began trading directly with each other, bypassing the collective's routes entirely. Forge World, the industrial colony, started producing medical equipment using designs that were 40 years old, but still functional. It wasn't as advanced as what the collective provided, but it worked. They shipped it to colonies that needed it most. Green Haven, the agricultural world, discovered that their grain varieties could grow in New Terra's harsh soil with minimal modification. Seeds were sent to 6 different colonies along with detailed growing instructions. Research Station Alpha, freed from collective restrictions on what they could study, made a breakthrough in water purification that reduced dependency on imported filtration systems by 60%. Epsilon Station, the mining colony, revealed something they'd kept secret for years. They had discovered deposits of rare minerals that the collective had claimed didn't exist in that sector. With careful extraction and distribution, those minerals could support manufacturing on other human worlds. "It's actually working," Marcus reported during a coordination call. "We're not matching collective efficiency yet, but we're surviving. And more importantly, we're building infrastructure that's independent of their control." Sarah studied the resource flowcharts. It was messy, inefficient, and required constant problem solving. But humans were good at messy problem solving. Where other species might have given up when the established system failed, humans just built a new system. "How many colonies are still holding firm?" she asked. 38 out of 43, Martinez reported. 5 broke ranks and accepted collective terms. But the rest are committed, and we're getting messages from human settlements that weren't part of the original refusal asking to join. The unexpected allies. The real surprise came from outside the human colonies entirely. It started with a message from the Torgath settlement on Harvest Moon. The Torgath were large, bear-like beings who had been trading with the collective for over 2 centuries. Their administrator, a grizzled individual named Grunthar, appeared on Sarah's communication screen looking uncomfortable. "Captain Chen," Grunthar began, his translator converting his rumbling speech into English. "The Torgath Council has been watching your species' coordinated action with interest. We have experienced similar pressure from the collective over the years, though never so blatantly. We wish to offer trade." Sarah's eyes widened. "Trade? But the collective has strict rules about non-approved commerce." "Rules the collective enforces when convenient," Grunthar replied. "We have surplus grain. You have industrial components we need. More importantly, the Torgath respects strength. What your colonies are doing shows strength. We would rather trade with the strong than with those who see us as resources to be exploited." That opened the floodgates. Within days, Sarah received similar messages from Creven mining operations, from independent merchant ships operated by the insectoid species, from smaller species who had felt the collective's pressure but never dared to resist. The galaxy, it turned out, had been waiting for someone to demonstrate that resistance was possible. The collective dilemma. 6 weeks into the human refusal, Crystallix returned to New Terra. He looked significantly less composed than during his last visit. The rainbow patterns in his crystalline skin flickered erratically, which Sarah's cultural database suggested indicated stress. "Captain Chen," he said without preamble, "the Collective Council wishes to discuss terms." Sarah gestured to a chair. "I'm listening." "The current situation is unsustainable for both parties," Crystallix continued. "The collective has lost significant production capacity. Multiple trade routes are disrupted. Several member species are questioning our pricing structures after seeing the terms we offered human colonies." "You mean they're realizing you've been exploiting us," Sarah said bluntly. Crystallix's colors shifted uncomfortably. "The collective operates on a model that has sustained galactic commerce for 3,000 years. We maintain stability, ensure reliable trade, and manage resources across hundreds of star systems. This requires a hierarchical structure where newer members contribute more until they prove their reliability." "Which is a nice way of saying you take advantage of whoever you think won't fight back, which is how any large organization operates," Crystallix countered. "The alternative is chaos, species competing directly, trade wars, resource conflicts. The collective prevents that." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm not trying to destroy the collective. I'm trying to fix it. Your organization provides real value. Coordinated shipping, standard currency, legal frameworks for trade. Those things matter, but you can't build a sustainable system on exploiting the weakest members." "Then what do you propose?" "The new framework." Sarah pulled up a document she'd spent the last 6 weeks crafting, with input from administrators across human settlements. Equal terms across all species. Same rates, same rights, same voice in collective decisions, regardless of how long a species has been a member. Standard contracts that can't be unilaterally changed. And an independent arbitration system for disputes. Crystallix studied the proposal, his colors shifting through patterns Sarah couldn't interpret. "The Collective Council will never accept this. It undermines the entire power structure we've maintained for millennia." "Then the collective will continue losing members," Sarah replied. Because humans are going back to the old system. And now that other species have seen resistance is possible, how long before they start demanding changes too? She pulled up news feeds from across the galaxy. Look at this. The Crevan labor unions are demanding renegotiation of their contracts. The Thinix merchants are forming an independent trading cooperative. Even some Valorian commercial entities are questioning whether the current system serves their interests. We didn't start a human revolution, Chryssalix. We started a galactic one. The truth of that seemed to settle over the Valorian like a heavy weight. 3,000 years of stability, threatened by one species that refuses to accept how things have always been done. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needed, Sarah said softly. Change is scary, I get it. But systems that don't adapt eventually collapse under their own weight. We're offering a chance to adapt before that happens. The decision that changed everything. 3 days later, Sarah stood before a holographic assembly of the Galactic Commerce Collective's full council. Hundreds of species were represented, from the towering Valorians to the microscopic zenith who appeared as clouds of glowing particles. This was the first time a human had ever addressed the full council. Members of the collective, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I stand before you not as a rebel, but as someone who believes in what the collective could be. An organization that ensures fair trade, protects all members equally, and serves as a foundation for mutual prosperity. She paused, letting her words translate across dozens of languages. But that's not what the collective has become. Over centuries, it has evolved into a system that benefits the powerful and exploits the vulnerable. The human colony's refusal to accept unfair terms wasn't an attack on the collective. It was a call for the collective to remember its original purpose. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some supportive, others hostile. Humans are often called unpredictable, Sarah continued. We're told we're too emotional, too irrational, too unwilling to accept established order. Maybe that's true, but those same qualities make us unwilling to accept injustice just because it's traditional. They make us fight for better solutions even when fighting seems impossible. She pulled up the independent trade network humans had built. In 6 weeks, 43 scattered human colonies built a functioning trade system from nothing. We did it with outdated technology, limited resources, and no central authority. Imagine what we could accomplish if the collective's resources were directed toward cooperation instead of control. Administrator Kimani from Research Station Alpha joined the transmission. The human network has already made 17 significant technological breakthroughs by sharing research freely instead of restricting it. Medical advances, agricultural innovations, engineering solutions. Progress happens faster when people work together as equals. Marcus from Epsilon Station added his voice. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the same treatment every species deserves. If the collective can't provide that, then we'll continue building our own system, and we'll welcome any species that wants to join us. The vote. The collective council debated for 7 hours. Sarah and the other human administrators waited, knowing that their entire future depended on what happened next. When the decision finally came, it was delivered by the collective prime director, an ancient Valorian whose crystalline body had faded to almost white with age. The collective council has voted, the prime director announced. By a margin of 67%, we have accepted the human proposal to restructure our trade policies. All member species will receive equal treatment under standardized contracts. An independent oversight committee will be established to ensure fairness, and human colonies will have full representation in future policy decisions. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. Around her, New Terra's leadership erupted in celebration. On the holographic displays, she can see similar reactions from administrators across human space. However, the Prime Director continued, and the celebrations quieted. This restructuring will require fundamental changes to how the collective operates. It will be difficult, complicated, and many members will resist. We will need species who understand struggle, who know how to build from nothing, who refuse to accept that things cannot change. The ancient Valorian's eyes found Sarah's. We will need humans to help lead its transformation. Captain Chen, The Collective Council formally invites you to serve as the first human member of the Oversight Committee. Will you accept? Sarah thought about her grandparents, who had come to New Terra dreaming of freedom. She thought about the 43 colonies who had stood together when standing seemed impossible. She thought about the galaxy slowly realizing that the old ways weren't working anymore. I accept, Sarah said. On behalf of all human colonies, I accept. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same observation deck where she had made the decision to refuse the collective's terms. So much had changed in half a year. The restructured collective was still chaotic, still figuring out how to operate as a true cooperative instead of a hierarchy. But it was working. Trade was flowing again, more fairly distributed than before. Species that had been marginalized were finding their voices. Innovation was accelerating as research became more collaborative. Martinez approached with a datapad. The Thrix just signed the new standard contract. That makes them the 47th species to formally accept the restructured terms. How many are still resisting? Maybe a dozen. Mostly older species who benefited most from the old system. But their influence is fading. The Crevan labor unions just announced they're supporting full restructuring. That's going to push more species toward acceptance. Sarah nodded, watching stars wheel past New Terra's position. Somewhere out there, human colonies were thriving in ways they never could have under the old system. And more surprisingly, other species were thriving too. You know what the Valorian news feeds are calling it, Martinez continued. The human catalyst. They're saying humans didn't just change trade policy. We catalyze a fundamental shift in how the galaxy operates. We just said no, Sarah replied. We just refused to accept that exploitation was normal. Sometimes that's enough, Martinez said. Sometimes all it takes is one species willing to stand up and show others that standing is possible. Sarah's communication device chimed with another message from Earth. The homeworld was finally taking serious notice of what their scattered colonies had accomplished. Politicians were already trying to take credit, to position themselves as leaders of the human resistance. Sarah didn't mind. Let them have their speeches and their posturing. The real work was happening out here, in the colonies that had stood together when it mattered most. Captain Chen, Martinez said quietly, what you did changed everything. You know that, right? 100 years from now, humans will still be talking about the human refusal. How one colony administrator convinced 43 settlements to stand together against the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Sarah smiled softly. I didn't do anything special, Martinez. I just remember something humans have always been good at. When someone powerful tells us we have no choice, we prove them wrong. When someone says resistance is impossible, we resist anyway. When the galaxy says this is how things are done, we ask, but what if they weren't? She turned from the window to face her communications officer. That's what makes us human. Not our technology, not our strength, not even our adaptability. It's our stubborn refusal to accept that better isn't possible. And now the whole galaxy is learning that lesson. Outside the window, New Terra's sun was rising, painting the colony in shades of gold and amber. A new day for a new world. The new era for a changed galaxy. All because humans had finally said no. And kept saying it until the universe listened.